Okay, thank you for having me here. It's always a privilege to talk in events like this. Yeah, it's an important institution because the concept of the free economic zones is quite important because the economy within the free economic zones actually contributes to the approximately 47% of the national exports. And according to the analysis that we do, it contributes roughly about in between 6 to 8% of GDP. So it's big and it's important. But I will go back to some of the issues actually and matters that Peter actually mentioned. This is how to close the gap in terms of getting actually good quality investments, because he mentioned, and I followed that quite closely, that traditionally foreign direct investors are labor intensive. And this is, to be honest, what is troubling actually me.
They are what, sorry?
Labor intensive.
Okay.
Actually, I have been on this position for just less than 1 year, but what I'm going to speak about now is something that actually comes from something that we are already trying to implement in practice, and what are, let's say, are the initial experiences from this. I mean, it's very clear that if we want to get much more technology-based investments, or I would say, in our words, let's say, I'm not sure whether it's an appropriate translation in English, but let's say good quality investments. Investments where both the investors, but also the national economy and the society benefits from. Of course, we need to change the approach, and this is what we are currently, I would say, not trying to do, but we are currently implementing some pilot steps. I don't think that there is a unique experience and a unique model in the world saying that this is the right way how to do it. And I'm not sure we can actually find a term that will define actually this kind of approach. So we simply say that we try to do a smart approach and get to a better quality or good quality investors in the country or in the region, if you want to put it that way. I think two things here are very important. One thing is, of course, that we need to have very clear and very simple frame of support for cooperation, meaning that everybody, both foreign but also domestic investors, need to know what they can potentially expect in terms of services from the government. Not only financial support, but I would say in general. But okay, let's focus also on financial or state support in general. So that's number one. The second thing is, what is also important, that we need to have certain degree of flexibility within this frame. Why? Because we need to understand, and this is also something that we are trying to struggle with currently in the institution and the society in the countries, that not all investors are the same. Meaning that we cannot have the same approach with investors coming from different sectors, but we cannot even have the same approach with investors coming from a single sector, but they have different companies. Meaning that we have introduced, and already implementing this, an instrument of an analysis. Meaning that we first try to understand who the investor is, what are they planning to do, but of course, what is their background? Because on paper, we can have all the nice numbers about what will happen in the next 10 years, but in the background, it can be just a company that is struggling to keep the head above the water in their national economy. So analysis is number one, of course. Two things, again, in this is crucial for us. And first, we are trying to understand what is needed on the side of the investor. And from the discussions that we have with over, I would say, already 30, both existing but also potential new investors in the country, we understand that they are in need of stable and clear legal environment. Number two, of course, they would like to see a very smooth implementation of regulations. I mean, we have companies operating in the country and hiring thousands of people that are still struggling to get through let's say, the labor regulations, which is puzzling. I have seen in my, let's say, last year in this position, that we have state institutions that tend to avoid implementing certain pieces of legislation because they simply think that this is not an appropriate thing to do, because they simply disagree with what is written in the law. And this is something that cannot happen. And then I understand why the analysis that EBRD made actually shows that much more companies in Southeast Europe, I would say Western Balkans, tend to go gray in comparison, let's say, to the Baltic states. And this is something that we're trying to struggle to do, let's say, within the economy, which is the free economic zones, where actually the director that I'm heading is trying to, let's say, to get the things done from the other state institutions. But on mid and long run, if this country and the economy wants, again, to focus on good quality investors and to have much more investments coming in the country, we definitely need to expand this also beyond the free economic zones and make it as a rule or as a model for the national economy. Of course, meeting contractual obligations from state institutions, including the directorate that I'm heading, is of course a must. But what we also need to, what is also important for the investors is that they need to know what we need or what we want from them. So one thing is that if we want to have a nice PR event when they come up, we cut all the nice tapes and then we show it to the public that we are successful, etc., etc. Or what I'm trying also to do now is that basically to make them aware that we are not interested in so much PR things, we are interested in the substance. And the substance is that actually we as a government and as an institution are very much interested to see investors that are going to pay taxes to this budget after the state aid period expires. That's number one, because this is one of the benefits that the country gets from the foreign direct investments. The second thing is, yes, we do want to see a great number of people employed, but the second thing which is very important and goes in parallel with this, and we want to have these people actually getting paid and getting paid well. Because one of the things that I also realized when I took office was that actually the average salary within the free economic zones in the companies is lower than the national average salary in the national economy. And this is again something that is troubling me, and I speak this openly. Meaning that this labor-intensive thing went too far, and we need to do something to modify that. And of course, besides taxes and the salaries, which are actually the benefits for the society and the government, the third point is, of course, we would like to see transfer of know-how and technologies and good practices, because this is, again, a benefit for the national economy from the investments. Again, this is something that we are trying to put into practice through different instruments, of course, in close communication with the companies that are currently operating within free economic zones. Of course, nothing is done overnight because, again, we need to keep the legal environment stable. We do meet our contractual obligations, but things need to change, and we are doing this currently. And what I can say is that partially, again, thanks to the new approach that we have, actually within less than a year, we already have either signed agreements or closed negotiations for investments which are over 200 million euros, which is actually 20% of the overall investments done in the past decade. Meaning that the existing investors, but also new investors, are already recognizing the, let's say, the value and the motives behind the approach that we have. And again, there is much more to come in the future period, but again, we try to communicate the message that we are here, we are stable, and of course, what is, let's say, the logo of our new, or the motto of our new campaign is that, no, Macedonia is not a country of cheap labor, but Macedonia is a country where each investor will come, can come, and can grow, because our motto is, we grow together.